All right, there we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Mental Health Monday here on Even Tacos Fall Apart. I am very excited to be back from vacation, first of all, and second of all, back to you guys and doing these Mental Health Mondays. So thank you for letting me take a week off and go have some good family times. It was really refreshing and very much needed. But I am back and joined tonight by Joanne Greene, and I'm really excited to have a wonderful conversation about post-traumatic growth today. So, Joanne, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you taking the time.
It's a privilege. Thank you.
I am going to go ahead and open up a question queue. If you are here live, and I see you, hello. If you are here live and you have any questions for our guests, feel free to pop them into the chat. If you're on Twitch, use exclamation point, the letter Q, and follow it with your question. And then if you're on YouTube, you can just pop them right into the chat and we'll get them going and get them incorporated into our conversation tonight. But before we get into the questions, I just want to introduce Joanne a little bit. So Joanne Greene never bought the adage, little girls should be seen and not heard. She used her voice on San Francisco radio and television, webinars, podcasts to explore the issues of our time with playful irreverence, candor, and compassion. With many decades of seasoning, she's sharing what she's learned about navigating family and career and moving through pain and loss. Currently, Joanne hosts the podcast In This Story, where she shares her micro essays set to music, showcasing tales and observations from her animated life. She writes press. She writes press has published her first book by accident, a memoir of letting go, in which Joanne emerges from life-threatening calamities with a big fat smile and a leap of hope. And that book cover is just wonderful. And I do have some social links, and I've got a book link as well. So if you're interested in connecting with Joanne, make sure that you do that. Here's a couple of ways that you can do that. And the last link that I'm going to post is a copy of her book that she just held up. And she did let me know earlier that it is an audio book as well. So for those of you who prefer audiobooks, make sure that you click through to that and download the audiobook so you can listen to it. And again, Joanne, thank you so much just for taking the time. I think this is going to be a great conversation. I'm excited for it.
Well, I have a lot to say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. We do already have our first question in the question queue. Bite Mark would like to know, what is your favorite poem?
I was tipped off that someone might ask that question, and I immediately thought of Mary Oliver, who passed away this year, and she's just an incredible poet. And the first poem of hers that popped into my mind is Wild Geese.
Okay.
So that is my answer.
I love it. And is that one a really long one or anything?
No, I can read it to you, in fact.
Oh, I would love that. That'd be awesome.
Sure. Hang on. Let me find it. I wrote it somewhere. That would not be where.
I haven't heard of wild geese before, so that's awesome. I'll have to look at
a
that one.
beauty.
Yeah.
You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things.
I love that. And I can see why you love it. Like, I feel like it lines up with what your book talks about and everything perfectly, too. What a good one. That's awesome.
Life is all about opportunities. So
Yeah.
that's the thing. We can say poor me and feel badly for ourselves for the things that happen, but that doesn't serve you. And I've learned that over the years and in many ways. We can't control what happens to us in life, but we can control how we respond.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how did you get to where you are now with doing what you are? You decided you wanted to be an author and a speaker. What kind of drew you to resilience as a subject?
Well, I've always been a writer, but I've never written anything like a memoir or a book at all. I have a fairly short attention span, so the concept of writing an entire book was pretty daunting. But my career largely was in radio and television and in news and producing features. So I've always been a writer, and it was always kind of a way in the back of my mind that someday, excuse me, someday I might write a book. And then I had a 10-year period in my life that was just extraordinary, and in both horrible ways and good ways. And I learned so much, and it was so kind of shocking, the series of things that kept happening to me, as though the universe was giving me tests, as though I was getting opportunities to either completely drown or thrive. And I decided that I had a story to share. And it was kind of toward the end of my career, and I started writing on the side and taking writing courses and joining writing groups and working with writing coaches. And then when COVID happened, I left my job because the place where I was working was shutting down for a period of time because it was open to the public. And it just seemed like that perfect moment for me to devote myself to writing and really double down and commit to finishing the book and getting it published. And that's what I did.
I love hearing stories like that where it's like this terrible thing that happened, and I'm talking about COVID. I mean, of course, people have terrible things that happen in their lives all the time. It's part of the reason I'm here doing what I do. But we view COVID. A lot of people talk about how bad things were and how nothing good came of it and all this stuff. But then you hear these stories of it gave me time to really reflect on this that I wanted to do, or to try something that I wanted to do, or people would bake bread and learn to knit and like all of these things, and it really gave, I think, in a way, a lot of people a pretty good break that they needed for a little bit of self-reflection, which is wonderful.
I used it, no question. I had
Hmm.
never been home based without being either sick or recovering from an injury or a surgery or something like that. I go at 50 million miles an hour, always have.
Hmm.
And suddenly I was home and really needed to learn about stillness and really be very conscious about how I used my time. So, we can do that. We can take what are on the surface negative experiences and sometimes even tragic experiences
Yeah.
and turn them into growth opportunities.
Yeah. Not to say if you did nothing during COVID, that's perfectly valid as well. Not saying that you should have done something productive or learned a new skill or anything. Like literally just surviving is enough. I don't want to put out there that
Doing
like,
nothing for me is very therapeutic. If I
yes.
can literally take a chunk of the day and do nothing, I feel very proud of myself.
I love that. I feel terrible when I try to do that. So it's something that I need to work on. It's something that I need to work on for myself. I had a pretty good weekend of not being super productive in like a checklist perspective, but it was a great weekend. So I definitely need to work on it. It's not doing nothing, it's resting. I love that. I love that comment. That's wonderful. It is. It's resting, it's recharging, it's rejuvenating. 100% fabulous comment. Thank you.
I agree.
Yeah. So, when you're not busy speaking, writing, all of that kind of stuff, what do you enjoy doing?
I love my dog. I play with my dog and walk her. And I'm a big hiker. I live in Northern California and we have incredible hiking trails everywhere. So I love hiking. I love music and dancing and family, family, family. So I have three grandchildren, two sons, two daughters-in-law, many nieces and nephews. Very, very involved in my community. So I volunteer in a number of different ways. Tomorrow night, for instance, my husband and I are going to be preparing dinner at a homeless shelter near us. So lots of things that I didn't have time to do when I was raising my kids and working full time that now at this stage of life, I can do. Um, Museums, all of it. Just really appreciating life, appreciating nature, getting out whenever I can into nature.
I really like that it's kind of that connection to all these things that you couldn't do when you were raising your kids, because I've talked about that before. Like, it's raising kids takes up so much time and energy out of you while you're doing it, that by the time your kids are older, like my 17-year-old started driving, and it was partially there's new worries there, right? It's a different
Yeah.
kind of worry and energy. But then partially it's like, oh, you mean I don't have to take you to that? You mean I don't have to do something for you to do? What do you mean you did a whole project and you just went and got the poster board for it instead of telling me at midnight the night before that you needed a poster board? Like, you just took care of it. That's amazing. And it you don't notice it while you're doing it because it's just constantly there and you're just doing it. So I love hearing that maybe in the future I'll get to enjoy things like nature and museums and those kinds of things.
Doesn't it sound great? It is
It
great, I
does.
will
It
say.
does. It does. It sounds really great. And I do try to do those kinds of things now, but it just doesn't always work out. So, do you have any podcasts that you're listening to right now, or that you feel like other people should listen to more or give a chance?
Yeah, I love podcasts. And I'm an old radio person. I worked in radio for 25 years, and podcasts are radio on demand. It's, you can listen to what you want when you want. So I've been really enjoying Wiser Than Me, which is Julia Louis Dreyfus's podcast, in which she's now in the second season, and she interviews older women because older women are wise and have a lot to
I
say. So
love
I've been
that.
really enjoying that. I listen to Pod Save America, which is hosted by some former speechwriters for President Obama. The Daily, which is a New York Times podcast, and the Ezra Klein Show. What else? For Heaven's Sake, which is giving me some perspective on what's going on in the Middle East right now from scholars at the Shalom Hartman Institute. So a real wide range.
Yeah, that is a wide range. That's a lot of good recommendations right there. I've heard of some of them. I haven't heard of all of them. So tell me a little more about For Heaven's Sake. What is that one?
So the Shalom Hartman Institute it's essentially a think tank, both in Israel and in North America. They have a whole North American presence as well. So it's usually about a wide range of topics, but since the war began a couple of 100 days ago plus, they're doing a daily count. It's really about that, and so it's been quite interesting to get the perspective of some scholars.
Yeah.
That's really who's talking on that podcast. And then I have a podcast, but
That's
mine is short. They're 4 or 5 minutes in length, and sometimes funny, always authentic, genuine, my observations, and they are about all kinds of things. So it's called In This Story with Joanne Greene.
I love that. I'm gonna grab a link. I should have grabbed a link for yours earlier and had it along with your book, but I totally spaced on that. So let me
No
grab
problem.
that
It's on all
one.
the podcast platforms. In This
Yeah.
Story.
Yeah. Oh, and it's on your website also. But let me
Oh
grab
yeah.
it. Yeah, let me grab it here too. And I'll just I'll post this one for you. For sure. All right, y'all go check out that podcast for sure. And as a podcaster, I can tell you anything you do to click buttons or type things helps tremendously. So, like it, subscribe to it, leave a comment. Even if the comment is, hey, just leave a comment. Anything helps. So, y'all go do that favor for me, and it'll do a favor for Joanne as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going to talk about post traumatic growth, and I want to kind of put that into context. So, what does post traumatic growth mean to you, and then how have you experienced that in your own life?
October 3rd, 2012, I was leaving work to go to my car, to get in my car to drive home to watch a debate between then candidate Barack Obama and Mitt Romney, right? Just to place this in history. And I was walking across the crosswalk in broad daylight, not on my phone, paying attention to what I was doing. A car stopped for me, and just as I got in front of that car, I heard what sounded like an explosion, and I found myself airborne, flying through the air. What had happened was a car had stopped for me, but a truck had come at full speed, which on that street was
No.
about 45 or 50 miles an hour, slammed into the car that stopped for me. He hit me. Thankfully, it was a sedan and not an SUV, because if it was an SUV, I would have gone under and been
Yeah.
immediately killed. But instead, I was thrown up onto the hood of her car. Her car was catapulted 50 feet down the road, and I fell off onto the street. The moment that I realized what was happening, that it wasn't in fact an explosion, but it was a car smashing into another car, my immediate reaction was to say, really? And I was saying that to the universe, to God, whatever, because I had just been coming off of a period of time where I had lost my mother, my sister, and my brother, all in a 4-year period.
Oh,
And the
no.
grief had been very debilitating. I was extremely close with both my mom and my sister, also close with my brother, but less so. And I knew my mom and sister were nearing death, but my brother's death was completely out of nowhere. So I had gone through this arduous grief journey and had kind of gotten myself fully back up to speed and back to work. And then this happened, and I had two reactions in that moment. One was, what the? And the other one was, okay, let's do this. And I can only attribute that to the fact that I come from a long line of survivors. Many of us do. Deep in our DNA is grit. You know, many of us are the children or grandchildren of immigrants. I am the grandchild of immigrants who came to this country for a better life. They didn't speak the language, they didn't have a penny in their pockets, and they just believed that they could make a better life. And so I think on some level I drew upon that. And turns out I had very, very life threatening and serious injuries, 4 pelvic fractures, the whole right side, all the soft tissue was crushed. I was hospitalized for 5 days and then sent home, told that the recovery would be up to a year and a half.
Yeah.
And that was just the physical recovery. The trauma one experiences, I never lost consciousness in the accident, so I remember every single minute. And, I kept having flashbacks, replays of the accident, and I had to develop a set of skills and tools to get through every day, to get through the physical pain, to get through the trauma, to get through having to ask for help and having to graciously accept help, however it was offered. I had to learn how to be still. I had always been a person in constant motion, a really high achiever, always trying to be the best at everything, the best broadcaster, the best daughter, the best mother, the best wife, all of those things. And I know many of the women listening tonight can understand what that's about. I felt like I was as good as my output,
Yeah.
as good as my
Oh, yeah.
achievements. And here, suddenly, the universe dealt me a blow that prevented me from not only achieving, but from taking care of myself. I was completely dependent on others. I couldn't get to the bathroom. I couldn't prepare food. I couldn't do anything. So I decided that this was an opportunity. In a sense, it was just how I saved myself. And I developed some skills that I later learned are applicable when anything happens to you. And I wrote the book to share those.
Yeah. So okay, well, first of all, I knew I was going to get this comment because you're talking about all these things, right? And being a high achiever and your productivity equals your worth kind of feeling. And sure enough, Bike Mark says sounds like mama, and it's not wrong. It's not wrong. I am very much that way. Like you talk about gold star motivation. My therapist one time brought in a package of gold star stickers and was like, is this what you need? Do we need to create a gold star system? And I was like, no, but give me one of those. So yeah, I fully get that. And having had surgery on both hands at one time, where I also could not do many of those things. I couldn't cook. I couldn't even open doors. Like I could do nothing.
You're
Yeah.
laughing now, but you weren't laughing then,
No,
I
I
bet.
wasn't laughing then. And fortunately, the recovery on that was very short. Like it was a few days before I could do things. Not I couldn't cook, I couldn't chop anything, couldn't lift anything, but I could open a door. I could put on my own clothes within a few days. That was terrible, but it needed to be done. So there's that. Um, so how did you said you had gone through all these periods of grief and everything. Do you think that that realization kind of started to dawn on you then, that it was coming back to this resilience and this growth and this healing? Or was it really like that instant of that car crash that kind of brought that into perspective
No,
for you?
I think that, life is a series of,
Yeah.
realizing how resilient you are if you draw upon your resources. And like everyone else, I've had challenges all along the way, all through life, but never something that completely stripped me
Yeah.
of any ability to do anything. This was a new level of low. I'd had surgeries before. Um, and so I was temporarily incapacitated,
Yeah.
but this was another level entirely. And so initially I didn't say, "Oh, this is a growth opportunity." I mean, it didn't quite
Right.
happen like that. It
Right.
was
Yeah.
over time, right? Oh, and with help. And I went to a particular kind of therapy that is especially good for trauma victims. There are many different therapies that are good for people who've experienced trauma. The path I chose was somatic therapy, which is really a way of not allowing the trauma to lodge in your body anywhere.
Yeah.
And I only needed to go to 9 sessions in order to do exactly what I needed to do to break that connection. But I did all sorts of things. Spirituality was helpful. The faith community was enormously helpful. When you give to people when you need it, they give back. So, and I have found that giving is what makes me feel whole and rich, really. So people wanted to give back. People wanted to come and take care of me and cook for our family and walk the dog because I literally couldn't be left alone. So even though my husband was here, he couldn't leave.
Yeah.
So I mean, right, or unless somebody else came to be with me. So it was quite a thing for many, many months.
Yeah. It's good that you had that community around you too. And that's something that I think um, some people have a little bit of a challenge with if they've isolated themselves somewhat and then they don't have that community around them. It can be really hard. It can be really hard to bounce back a little bit. So, what were,
Absolutely.
you said you did somatic therapy and some other things as well. What were some of the biggest mental and emotional hurdles that you were trying to get yourself past during your recovery? And how did those things help you?
A very big one was a gratitude practice. There are so many things that our moms taught us when we were growing up and we rolled our eyes, like count your blessings. It is some of the best advice anyone could ever give you because here's the thing, no matter how deep your despair is, if you fill your mind and your heart with all the blessings in your life, I'm so lucky that I have a husband who's here. I'm so fortunate that even though I'm not going to be able to work for at least 6 months or more, we're not going to lose our house. At least I didn't have a traumatic brain injury, right? At least I'm able to speak. Um, those kinds of things. So gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. Very, very helpful. A friend of mine said at one point, you can visit the pity pot, but don't be packing your bags and moving in. I thought that was a really good
Nice.
one because, yes, it's reasonable to feel sorry for yourself
Sure.
when everything sucks and it just seems like your world is crumbling. But do that, cry, feel through the pain, and then dust yourself off and get back up, metaphorically, because I wasn't getting up anywhere, but
Yeah.
sort of boosting yourself back up and remembering what you're grateful for. Another big one was something that, again, my mom, who has been gone since 2006, but I remember this so well. She would say, "This too shall pass." That's a really good one. No matter how bad the physical pain is, it's not going to be the same a few minutes from now. It could be worse, probably going to be better. And that's true of everything. When you feel absolutely hopeless, this is going to pass. It's going to change. It's going to morph into something else. When you are in the depths of grief, you feel like you're never going to get out of it, that you are always going to be crying all day. You're not. You're going to change is inevitable. It's the only thing we can count on, really. That as time passes, change happens. So that was another reminder to myself. I would say it over and over again. Another one was just, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. And here's the thing, even if you don't believe it, just keep saying it. The same way that we all, maybe not all, many, if not most of us, one time or another, give ourselves negative messages. Things like, who do you think you are? You're an imposter. What do you do? You think you can have a podcast? You think you can write a book? Right? It's a human thing to give ourselves negative messages. Well, the thing is, we start to believe it when we hear it
Mm.
again and again and again and again and again. So I started saying, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, even when I couldn't do it, whatever it was. Putting, I was using a walker at the beginning, but I couldn't put any weight at all on the right side of my body. So I pretty much had to hold my body weight with my arms. And thankfully I could, because I'd been working out before the accident. But it was this, I'm going to be able to get through this. I'm going to be able to get through this. Don't think about 6 months or 8 months, or I couldn't even imagine anything beyond 2 weeks. I had never had any recovery that had lasted longer than 2 weeks. And now they're telling me, you may never be fully recovered. P.S. I am fully recovered. I mean, fully. No residual damage. And so eventually I recovered from the accident, and then life being what it is, I had a couple of other major challenges that the universe dumped in my lap, and it's all in the book. I don't want to give all the plot points away, but suffice it to say that I got a cancer diagnosis 2 years after the accident, and thankfully was able to move through that and complete remission. I'm fine. But these are ways I had the opportunity to practice my new skills.
Mhm.
So I had to talk myself into, what do you know right now? All you know is that you are going to have surgery. Doesn't mean you're going to have chemo. Doesn't mean your hair's going to fall out. Doesn't mean you're going to be sick for months and months. Don't know that yet. What do we know for sure? Separating reality from our mind spinning out is a critical survival skill.
Yeah.
And reminding yourself, what do we know for sure? And what am I speculating?
Yeah. I have a dear friend who uses a mantra whenever she's kind of visiting that pity pot, right? She'll say, yeah, like, yeah, things are bad. Yeah, things suck right now, but I can walk, I can talk, and I can use my mind. And she says if any of those three things fail, that she'll have to revisit. But it's one of those things that's like, okay, things are bad. Can you still handle basics? And if you can't handle basics, what can you do? Like find the little ways to acknowledge that things aren't, it's not the end of the world for you right now, this moment, and that it's going to be
Right. And
okay.
now I look at all diagnoses as, is it not even, is it curable? Is it treatable? Is it treatable?
Yeah.
That's my new question. Yeah.
Yeah. So you went through a lot of these different types of trauma and a lot of different types of growth and recovery. What are some common misconceptions either you had about trauma and recovery or that you've heard from other people along the way?
PTSD, which is post traumatic stress disorder, is not inevitable. You do not have to have it just because you've been in a traumatic incident. There are things you can do, and having an appropriate response to trauma is not a disorder. So PTSD is actually a disorder, very different. Yes, if you've had a trauma, you're going to have all sorts of responses
Yeah.
because our nervous systems are very sensitive. And when you've been in a situation where you absolutely knew that you might not make it through alive, that's going to do some damage that you are going to have to deal with. So PTSD is not inevitable. That's a big one. Um, you can just become a better person and continue to grow, even though really difficult things happen to you. Um, I made it a point to write down ways in which it's like, what was I learning? And it's in the book. There's like a place where I go through it because I wrote them down by hand and scotch taped them up inside of my medicine cabinet. So every time I open my medicine cabinet, I see these things. And here are some of them. I feel more comfortable and safer at an adjusted pace. I was someone that moved really quickly. I don't need to rush through life. I can take my time. It's not just about how much I accomplish in a day, and this one's for you, Mama, but how I do what I do that matters. I never regret taking time to spread joy. I must accept that people are different than me with varying needs for intimacy and privacy. Some people who I counted amongst my closest people did not show up because it's just not what they do. It makes them uncomfortable. Seeing me that broken was too hard. I had to deal with that. While I don't want to be known as the woman who had that terrible accident, I don't mind being known as the woman whose positive attitude carried her through. And another one was good health is neither a given nor a right. Each pain-free moment is an amazing miracle. My job is to continue to feel gratitude and carefully consider what I'm going to do with the precious time I have. So those are all things that I learned from the experience, which
I
I don't
love
think people
those.
tell you.
Yeah. Well, I don't think a lot of people take the time to write it down either, like
Well, if you think it, write it down because you need to remember those things.
yep.
I mean, those are things I don't want to forget. This never regretting taking time to spread joy. I pat every dog I see. I stop and play with every little child in a stroller that walks past me if the person pushing that stroller isn't in a rush, because you can spread joy and have like a lovely little moment of connection. And that is what makes life richer.
Yeah. I'm a
Mine,
big
anyway.
I'm a big compliment giver. Like I'll say, "Oh my God, I love your dress, nails, hair, whatever it is," and just like give out these little compliments because I'm like, if I noticed it, I should say something, right? Like they clearly put in
Absolutely. It
effort.
makes people feel good.
Yeah, they put in effort for it, and I feel like it costs me absolutely nothing to do something like that. And I don't necessarily play with babies because babies are germ filled, and I don't
Well, they might
necessarily
spit
need
up
that.
on you.
They might spit up on
Oh my
you.
gosh. Well,
They might
now,
cry,
so with
Yeah.
grandchildren now, I've let all that go, and
Yeah.
they can spit up on me. They can do
Yes.
whatever. It's
Well, I feel like
it's
that's
great.
different when it's your own child or your own grandchild,
Yeah,
that
they're all mine.
comes with
They're
the
all mine, all
territory,
of the world.
like. But yeah, petting dogs and just finding those little moments of like those little moments of humanness in a day, whether that's, spreading something for someone else or bringing joy to yourself. But yeah, I think a lot of people they might learn these lessons, but a lot of people don't take time to either write them down or acknowledge them aloud or in writing or something like that. And I feel like, and maybe you can talk about a little bit, was that important for you to write those things down
Absolutely.
and acknowledge them?
Yeah, I'm the sole surviving member of my original family, and my sister and brother, who've both passed away, had children and grandchildren. And so I feel like I have even a greater responsibility to teach and to be a role model
Mm.
for how to move through life. And, while I'm not a teacher per se by profession, I feel like in some ways I want to be a guide or a coach. Not officially, I don't have a certification or anything like
Yeah.
that, but I find that a lot of people who are younger than me come to me and ask for advice, and I feel like it's something I've managed to accumulate is some wisdom over the years. Do you know how old I am? How old do you think I am?
Oh no, I never guess. I'll say 40. That's it. That's all I'll say.
No, I want you to be honest.
Oh no, I will not guess an age. No.
I'm 70.
Wow. Okay. All right.
I am, and I love it. I'm happier at 70 than I've ever been before.
Yeah. That's good. I mean, that's a great thing to be able to look back and reflect on too. That's awesome.
Absolutely. I mean, people complain about aging all the time. I don't get it. To me, it's a total privilege.
Yeah.
My sister and brother didn't get to age. I'm getting to age. It's great.
Well, and you were talking about that
And what
podcast where they interview folks or women who are older. I think that's really important to kind of you're kind of circling back to it a little bit to say like you've got all these people coming to you because you have all this life experience and all these things that you've been through, and just being willing to share it, I think, is something that's really really nice.
it means a lot. It means a lot to me to share it.
Yeah. So when it comes to recovery and growth, you've talked a little bit about, your community that supported you and the faith community. If you had to kind of pin down like what role did your support system play, what would you say?
Well, many roles. I could do nothing. So
Yeah.
my family, first and foremost, my husband was incredible. Some people say that my book, by accident, is a love letter to Fred. And
Oh,
because I didn't mean it to be a love letter to Fred, but in fact, um, he didn't have any experience taking care of someone, and he completely rose to the occasion, and we grew together. We became closer through the experience, and this week we're celebrating our 44th wedding anniversary. We met working
congratulations.
in rock and roll, yeah. We met working in rock and roll radio in San Francisco in the 70s.
Oh, that's
To
awesome.
give you a sense of my background, some of that is in the book as well, some flashbacks to those days. But my children showed up. They're grown and, you know, out of the house, but they came back and were very helpful. One lived in the Bay Area and one came back and stayed with us for a few weeks to help out. Friends were extraordinary. Community was incredible. And again, I had resources, so
Yeah.
I was able to get somatic therapy, physical therapy. Um, I was able to hire a masseuse to come periodically because, when you're injured as severely as I was, all the other parts of your body are like thrown out of whack. And
Yeah.
so things that weren't specifically injured in the accident were giving me all kinds of pain, neck, shoulder, all these other things. So that was really helpful. I read a lot. I watched a lot on TV. I remember the San Francisco Giants were winning and in the World Series while I was recovering that October, so that was good. I watched more pitches than I'd ever seen in my entire life because I couldn't move.
Yeah. Were there any books that particularly helped you? Like, well, I guess first of all, what kind of books do you read? Do you read like nonfiction, self help? Do you
I read
or do you read
everything. I'm a
fiction? Yeah,
voracious reader.
yeah,
I read everything.
yeah.
Um, I read constantly. It was hard to read. I'll admit it. It was very hard to read at the beginning. First of all, I couldn't even really hold a book.
Yeah,
So it took a while before I could really read and before I had any kind of attention span.
sure.
And everything was triggering. So loss. I mean, books are filled with accidents and
Yeah.
injuries and losses. And so any of it, sent me back into a fetal position. Television was especially, that's why baseball ended up being good, because I pretty much knew that there wasn't going to be a car crash
Right.
on the field,
Right.
and things like that. But someone sent me a book of Psalms. I know that sounds crazy. I've never been a person who would respond to something like that, but this was kind of a how do I want to? They weren't in the original language. They were like revisioned. It was a feminist author who had written these, and there's one. Maybe I can just go right to it and read it to you. That just was profound. And I remember thinking, what has happened to me that I am reading Psalms and it's actually making me feel good? Okay, here it is. Sit beside me, now this is when I was at my worst. Okay. Sit beside me, O Eternal, comfort my soul. Recall to me my cherished memories, to bring me forward through adversity, to stretch from then to now to beyond, beckoning to a future you will guard. Walk beside me, O Eternal, comfort my soul. Help me find the broken pieces, gathering them to my trembling hand, raw materials for my future life. Let me find your hand in this design. Wrap me in your healing light. Wrap me in your healing care. And that gave me enormous comfort, which, again, totally surprised me. But I felt like, yeah, that's what it is. I need to hang on to my beautiful memories. I need to have faith that I'm going to be taken care of by somebody, something, the universe, myself, the forces of good in the world, and I'll get there, and I'll
Mhm.
get there.
I feel like sometimes you can connect with something when you're reading that you would otherwise not have connected with, just depending on your circumstances. I have a couple of series of books that I read and reread periodically, and it'll be like 5, 10 years between reading these series, and every time I go back and revisit this one over here, I'll pick up something and I'm like, wow, my opinion on that has changed significantly and now I don't like it. Or I'll read this other series over here and I'm like, I hated this before and now I really like it because XYZ happened. So it's interesting that that came to you through a friend right whenever it would resonate with you instead of before then or after then when you would have just kind of been like, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't have even. I mean, yeah, I would have been like, why,
Yeah, yeah.
why,
Yep, yep.
right?
Can you share some either techniques or exercises that have helped you let go of past traumas and move forward?
Yeah, I could never meditate before. I had tried. I've always done yoga. I started doing yoga in 1974. So that would make it 50 years. And I've been doing yoga regularly, and it has been a godsend to me. It I'm very flexible as a result. But more than that, it's a centering. But I could never just sit in one position and meditate. My mind was always going, monkey mind, we call it, anxious mind, thoughts. And when I couldn't move, I really tried practicing meditating, and now it's practice for me. Now I can do it. And so I say to everyone who thinks they can't meditate, you can. You just have to practice. And only give yourself a couple of minutes. Just a couple of start with 3 minutes and you build up over time. And now I can sit for 20, 25 minutes and I'm not feeling like looking at my watch or feeling like, what am I missing? Or I need to check my email right now, which I would have in the past always thought. So that's one thing. Um, Giving myself permission to chill, just to chill, like reading a novel in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon, would never have allowed myself to do that in the past. Now, granted, I'm 70 years old, so I've kind of earned the right, but I don't think I needed to wait this long, right?
Yeah.
I think I could have allowed myself certain pleasures, things that just make me so happy. I was writing an essay today about idiosyncrasies, and I have this whole new morning ritual, and I'm loving it. It's just goofy and simple, but I go and I make myself a very indulgent latte, and I bring that coffee back to bed, and I sit and do New York Times puzzles. I do Wordle and spelling bee and connections, and I text with a few friends, and I don't jump up and go running into my day like I did for my whole life. I just, morning to me is glorious. I hear the birds, I feel the sunlight, I go outside, I take my time. The world is filled with possibilities, and I'm awake and I woke up again. Yay.
That's awesome. I If I was a morning person, I would do that.
Oh, but I'm worthless after 9, 10 p.m.
Okay, all right. See, that's when I'm like hitting my hey, I'm awake now. So I need like an evening ritual maybe with something like that. Probably not with coffee because that would just make me stay up later. Not really though.
No, but baths are wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Okay,
I
good.
love
All right.
baths.
Now we're on the same page. Now we got
Maybe
it.
maybe with some oils or,
Mhm.
something, some bubbles, candles,
Yep. I could get into
music.
that. Yes. You mentioned
You just
meditation and just having kind of a hard time doing it. And I want to throw out there that I, not so much anymore, but whenever I was driving the kids back and forth before my teenager started driving, pretty much, we were listening to the Meditation Minis podcast. And if you're the kind of person, because I am this kind of person, I do find it hard to meditate. So my meditation is very non-traditional now, which is fine. You don't have to have traditional meditation. But if you're the kind of person who's like, I can't meditate, etc., the Meditation Minis podcast with Shell Hamilton is wonderful. And they're short, they're like less than 10 minutes. Like I said, I used to do them. I would pop them on in the car on the way to take the kids to school, and we would all do a meditation together and still have time to talk about it after it was done.
while driving?
While driving. Well, because I,
Okay, that's a
you know,
kind of meditation.
yeah, it is. Now, like I said, my meditation can't be eyes closed. I have vertigo, so when I just keep my eyes closed, if I'm sitting still or standing up or anything like that, it's bad news bears. So first of all, I can't meditate while my eyes are closed, generally speaking, unless I'm laying down. But also, you're talking about the mind racing. My mind is constantly racing. So these days, my meditations are like, I'm gonna do this coloring page and just let my brain flow while I'm doing this coloring page. Yep.
It's a beautiful thing to do. The other
Yeah.
thing is just being in the present,
Mhm.
trying always to be in the present. So often we live in the future and the past, and we're bouncing back
Yeah.
and forth, and we really can't live in the future, so it's kind of a waste of time. And living in the past isn't really productive either. When you're in the present, you can notice exactly what is happening around you and exactly what you're feeling. And what I've learned as a technique to manage anxiety is really centering in on what am I feeling and where in my body am I feeling it, and then breathing. Breathing is key to moving through anxious periods or stressful periods.
Yeah. That's something
Slowing
that
your
I'm
breathing
hearing
down.
more and more people mention is like, where do you feel it in your body? And that's not something a few years ago I had never heard that question before. Like, I'm feeling anxious about something. No one, if someone had asked me where I felt that in my body, I'd been like, the hell are you talking about?
So it could be sometimes it's in your chest,
Yep.
you know? Sometimes it's in your belly.
Yep.
And if you focus in on where you're feeling it and like just try to get inside of that spot, miraculously it starts to lift.
Yep.
Try it. I mean, that's my experience.
Yeah. I love it. If you were to talk to someone who's currently facing a significant life challenge, physical, emotional, mental, whether that's like car crash or cancer diagnosis or something else, what advice would you give to them if they are just at the beginning of that?
Well, first of all, I would listen to them. I think often we talk too much and don't listen enough. And when people are in the throes of something really difficult, sometimes you just need to show up and be present and keep your mouth shut. So I like to be present and let people ask me questions. And rather than me saying, here's what you should do, because that's very frustrating when people who are not exactly in your shoes, and nobody ever is exactly in your shoes, tells you what you should be doing. But one thing I find myself telling people recently that I think is pretty universal is to look at various behaviors that you're engaging in, or things you're telling yourself, or people you're surrounding yourself with, or jobs that you're sticking with longer than maybe you should, and ask yourself if this is serving you. Is this serving me? Is this behavior, this pattern, this friendship, this relationship, is it serving me? And if it isn't, then I would say look at ways that you can either maybe create some boundaries so that you're not adversely impacted in those ways, or maybe make a change, because nothing is like a life sentence, right? You're not stuck unless you think you're stuck, unless you put yourself in a situation where you're stuck. In terms of a diagnosis, I would say, what do we know right now? Really focus on what we know right now, because so often we're spinning. You know, people live from test to test until they know, has it returned? Has it spread? What do we know today? And with loss, I think you just have to move through it. There are no shortcuts through grief.
Yeah.
You you cannot go around it. You have to go through it. And if you try to skip some steps, you'll run into roadblocks later on down the road. So you can't rush grief. A year after my mom and sister died 5 months apart, and a year later, I was like, "What's wrong with me? Why aren't I snapping back?" And I went and saw a therapist who said, "Where'd you ever get the idea that in 1 year you were supposed to be fine?"
Yeah.
I said, I don't know. It just seemed so. Those are some pieces of
Yeah.
advice.
It is hard when it comes to grief to say, like, you want to say, okay, a year later, I should be okay now, right? But that's not how it works. It's just
No, it's
not.
not linear. And,
Mhm.
but I will say this, having had, I've lost both parents and both siblings, and a number of friends over the years. And that the way that the grief is at the beginning, where it just bowls you over like a wave. I mean, for me, the wave analogy worked really well. The tide does go out. You still feel the pain, you still feel the loss. But over time, a lot of time, some of that pain is supplanted by feelings of love, and you're missing the person, but it's different. It's a feeling of love rather than a feeling of loss.
Yeah.
So it does get easier, I think.
I heard somewhere someone said, it's not that your grief gets smaller. It's that life grows around the grief. And so
I like that.
your grief stays the same size. Maybe it gets a little smaller, a little easier to manage, but the main thing is that your life is going on around it, and it's not that you're moving on around it, it's that you're growing around it. And I love
And your
that
loved ones are always with
description.
you, even
Yeah.
when they're no longer on the planet. They're with you. I am certainly in my dreams. I dream about my
Oh
sister all
yeah.
the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you have self-described yourself as a former control freak and a perfectionist. So, you talked about having to let go of that, but how did you learn to then, after you had to let go of it for a little while, to then kind of embrace that more flexible approach to life?
I don't know if there's any real formula for that. I think it was a matter of just getting comfortable not being in. I think control is an illusion. It's a very seductive illusion. I used to always want to be the person behind the wheel of the car because I felt safer if I was controlling the car. Oh, did I once again hit a nerve?
You did. We just went on a really long car trip and I drove the whole time.
I get it. I still feel more comfortable behind the wheel, but part of it is just sometimes when I'm not feeling comfortable as a passenger in a car, I just shut my eyes. Because if I can't see what's going on, then I'm not as nervous about it or anxious about it. Um, Mostly it's about not being hard on myself. I think that's the single biggest thing. And prioritizing in my mind what absolutely has to get done today and what
Yeah.
would it be nice if it got done and what absolutely has to get done this week. Um, Rather than feeling like I just have to like go, 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 go until I hit the wall and then I collapse in exhaustion.
Yeah. That's hard. That's hard. It's hard for me.
And in terms of perfectionism, I mean, you don't publish a book until it is every single punctuation mark is exactly right. And so you have other people help you with that, is what you do.
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
editors, copy
Absolutely.
copy proofreaders and copy editors and all kinds of people. But
Yeah.
yeah, writing a book is a big undertaking. I would not recommend it to very many people.
I
I'm really
have
glad I did it.
I have a couple friends, and that's exact. Yes. So I have a couple of friends. One is a ghostwriter, and she loves being a ghostwriter because she's like, I can just do the part that's fun and not have to worry about any of the rest of it. And then I have another one who's actually an author under a couple of different pen names, and she talks about the stress of it. And it's like the two both enjoying writing, one of them doing it this way, one of them doing it that way. But at the end of the day, like if you ask them, why do you do it? They're like, it's so fulfilling to have it done at the end of the day and to be able to have this outlet at the end of the day. So I think it takes a certain kind of person. and
Yeah,
and
I mean,
also it's a certain kind of stress too.
yeah, no, it's well, for now, I'm not stressed with it at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I have a podcast every 2 weeks. I have to produce another episode,
Yep.
and my episodes are each one is a new essay. So
I like that.
I'm all set with my one for next week.
Nice. It's that ongoing motivation to first of all write and then also keep working on it. That's great.
Exactly.
Your post recovery. So can you share some practices or habits that have helped you kind of maintain that positive and fulfilled life philosophy?
Absolutely. Yoga, dance,
Yeah.
exercise, eating really well. I'm an extrovert. I get a lot of sustenance and sort of energy from being with other people. And it doesn't even have to be in person necessarily, it can be on the phone or on Zoom or whatever. And so I acknowledge that. And I have a lot of interaction in the course of my day, um, and downtime and time where, I'm on the couch or in my bed reading or listening to a book. Um, Again, meditating, and giving back. I have lots of little places in my life where I'm giving back and taking care of other people. It was something I vowed I would carve out time for in my future to show up for people the way people showed up for me.
Oh, that's
I
great.
love singing and dancing, and um, I go for long walks and I try to notice plants that weren't there yesterday and just really paying attention to what is around me and appreciating it.
Yeah. I mean, all of
And
those
being a
are all
grandma.
those are great. And being a grandma. Aw.
Well, I wasn't a grandma when all this started.
Yeah.
So, the epilogue of my book was written after my granddaughter is born, and life is very different from that point on. I see myself very differently. I have a different role in the universe as a grandma than I did before. So,
Yeah. That's awesome. We're getting to the last couple of questions here. So if anyone in the chat has a question for Joanne, please make sure to pop it in there, and we'll just continue on with these last couple, and then we'll do anything that's left in the Q&A. So, what is your favorite life hack?
this is a wackadoodle one. When I
Yes.
make pasta, I take a piece of the pasta and throw it up against the wall, and if it
Yes.
sticks, I
Yes.
know it's done.
Yep. That's awesome. I've heard
That's
that
one.
before. Throw it at the wall, throw it at the refrigerator. Like that's how you can
If it
tell.
sticks, it's done.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have millions of them, but that's that when you asked me that question or told me you were going to ask me that question, that was the first thing that popped into my head. So
Yeah. Yep. It's just the starchiness and the doneness and the kind of density of the noodle makes it stick. That's great.
and who doesn't
Perfect.
love pasta?
Yeah. Well, so this is the magic moment, and I have a special prop for this. Now, if you had a magic wand and you could wave it and eliminate one common opinion, misconception, or theory surrounding mental illness, disabilities, or talking about mental health, what would it be?
Oh my gosh, I would eliminate the stigma. You know, we all have challenges and everyone, if they don't have a mental health challenge themselves, they have someone in their family who does. And
Absolutely.
I would eliminate shame. I would eliminate shame, A, because it will prevent you from asking for help. And asking for help can be your ticket out of the pain and misery. Um, I've had mental health challenges my whole life, and not my whole life, but since I was a teenager, I had anorexia when I was 17 years old. Nobody knew what it was back then in 1971. And, it was an anxiety disorder. If I'd come from a different family, I might have had alcoholism, but, you know, it, we are all struggling to move through life. We live in a country where addiction is at terrible proportions. And so I would say eliminating stigma and shame so that people can ask for and receive appropriate help. We also live in a time when there are incredible medications that can help people by just giving them a safety net so that if they suffer from depression, they don't have to go below a certain threshold, but they'll have a safety net there. Um, and I say, whatever tools you need to make yourself feel better is what you should get.
Yeah. It's another tool in the toolbox. And that goes hand in hand with shame also, because it's like you don't have to have the shame over needing something that your brain is not producing, right?
If
So,
you were a diabetic, you would have it, you would go get
yes.
insulin.
Yeah.
So if you're depressed, why aren't you getting antidepressants?
If you break your arm, you're going to go get a cast.
Right.
Your body can't
It's
make its
part
own
of your health.
cast. Yeah. Like all
It's
those.
part of your health.
Absolutely. I like that. I appreciate it. Well, I will just open it up to you, Joanne, and if there's anything we didn't cover, anything we didn't talk about, feel free to throw it out there. And while you're doing that, I will post all of your socials and your book link one more time, just that if people are looking to connect with you, they can do so. But I'll just give you the floor for a little bit.
Well, my website is the best way to connect with me. You can sign up for my newsletter there, and you'll hear about appearances I might be making to talk about the book. Or I love that the cat is in
I
the
know
picture.
he's
This
just
is
he's
so
just
cute.
trying to get me.
There you go. And I invite people to listen to the podcast, which is free, and to buy the book, which is not free. And but it's very reasonable. It's available as an ebook for Kindle. You can just go on Amazon. You can, if you have an Audible account, it's available on Audible. Many libraries have it, and if you call your library and they don't have it, ask them to order it, or your friendly neighborhood bookstore. I mean, we talk about Amazon all the time, but I really am very much a proponent of supporting our local independent booksellers, and many have it,
Yep.
and those that don't can order it. So it's By Accident, a memoir of letting go.
Perfect. Well, I will also throw out there, like, libraries, first of all, love to talk to people. And they want to know what people want to read. So if you have never called a library and asked them for a book, I highly recommend that you do so. And then same with local booksellers. Like if you call them and say, "Hey, I would love if you would carry this book," they might say like, "No, we're not going to carry that." I don't know why they would.
Or they can order you one copy.
They can order you one copy. Exactly. So, support local, support libraries. I absolutely agree with that. 100%. Well, Joanne, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I had a lot of fun. And we both got the pink memo. I didn't even notice that until we were like halfway through. I'm like, look at us rocking the pink.
Right away. I thought we do not clash at all.
It's perfect. It's wonderful. I love colors, so it's all in there. But thank you so much. This was a blast.
You are very welcome, and best to you and to all of your listeners.
Absolutely. All right, chat, give me just a minute. I'm going to disconnect with Joanne. I will be right back. Stick around.